Welcome to MojoPlays, and these are our picks for the top 10 worst video game endings. Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Not every game can end on a high note, but these titles managed to make our time feel meaningless. Whether they failed to tie up loose ends or simply ended things with a whimper, these endings were incredibly irritating.
Only you, your implant, your energy, can activate the Scrin portal.
No Man's Sky, launch ending. No Man's Sky went down as the biggest gaming disaster of 2016. In addition to a vague marketing campaign and overall boring experience, No Man's Sky had an ending that felt like a giant middle finger to those who spent hours upon hours to reach the center of the universe. Enjoy the spectacular presentation of Particles, the experience, as you watch every planet and living thing you encounter disappear. Now go do everything again in the new galaxy. Thankfully, this isn't the case anymore, as No Man's Sky now features a story mode and multiple endings. Still, the launch ending stung for players who stuck around. Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge.
All right, I promise. Anything, just put my leg back on.
Hey, you kids! You're not supposed to be in here.
What was supposed to be a major plot twist for the Monkey Island series only wound up making things frustratingly confusing. In what would be their final confrontation, Guybrush Threepwood defeats LeChuck only to discover the villainous captain was his brother. This is where things spiral from somewhat to ridiculously convoluted. Playing through the flashback sequence that followed after only presented more questions. The whole ending was such a farce that the developers retconned it at the start of Monkey Island 3, The Curse of Monkey Island. Way to catch yourself before you fall, guys. Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords.
It is said that the Force has a will. It has a destiny for us all. I wield it, but it uses us all, and that is abhorrent to me.
Yes, another game that we sunk hours upon hours into, only to get an ending that made the whole experience feel meaningless. Remember all of those relationships you built? All those long hours spent strengthening bonds? Yeah, that was a complete waste of time. To make everything worse, most of our questions went unanswered. Why did Krya turn to the dark side? Why was she so hell-bent on blowing up the planet? You mean to tell us that we spent 50+ hours just for her to fall down and succeed with her plans? Talk about anticlimactic.
It, like Malachor, brushes the edges of the Empire that waits in the dark. And like Malachor, the Sith have forgotten it. For a time, they will remember. Revan knew this.
Alone in the Dark.
So, here's the man who walked the path of light. Was it a pleasant walk? You're really starting to piss me off, Crowley.
A good ending would not have saved Alone in the Dark. It was already a nightmare in of itself. With its abysmal writing and a mass of technical issues, the game had already managed to turn this once legendary franchise into a husk of its former glory. As if the whole package wasn't bad enough, Alone in the Dark ended things with a choice: force Edward Carnby to kill his partner Sarah and allow Satan to possess her, or refuse. Well, it doesn't matter what happens because in the end, someone is going to get possessed. Humanity is screwed, and the devil will say something douchey.
Did you think I'd come alone?
Command & Conquer 4, Tiberian Twilight.
Save this planet!
Enough of your lies!
As we learned from Alone in the Dark, never give the player a false ending if you can't devise a unique enough outcome. Command & Conquer 4 made the same mistake as our previous entry in that it provided the player with a choice only for them to conclude the same way. You die, Kane uses the portal, and the Tiberian Towers become stable. If this false choice wasn't enough to get your feathers ruffled, the uncomfortably campy interview sure did.
We've survived the worst, and our faith in humanity has persevered. We did it.
Ghosts and Goblins. You ever played Ghosts and Goblins? It's insanely hard. You got ghosts and goblins and zombies and demons flying at you all over the place. It's one of the most difficult platformers ever made, and it has one of the most anticlimactic endings we've ever seen. Once you've beaten the final boss, you're told that the entire journey was an illusion, and so you're sent back to the beginning for another run. Come on. Fallout 3.
Not exactly how I imagined going out, you know? So, what should we do? Draw straws?
As if the fight with Colonel Autumn wasn't bad enough, Fallout 3 continues its descent into disappointment with, altogether now, false choices. All 3 choices portrayed your character in a heroic light, more or less, which would completely contradict those who wanted to be evil. Regardless, each choice ended with a bang, literally, and your untimely demise. Oh, and if you're planning to go back and finish any quests you had, you could kiss your progress goodbye. Fallout 3 ends your game as soon as you complete the final mission, forcing you to start a whole new game. At least the Broken Steel DLC fixed this flaw and allowed us to return to our old saves.
For the struggle of survival is a war without end. And war never changes.
Sniper, Ghost Warrior.
Do not get compromised or the target will escape. Compromise equals failure.
Proceeding. Speaking of abrupt endings, Sniper Ghost Warrior is one of the most shameful endings out there. The final level holds a vantage point where you can possibly snipe your target from across the map. Once you've neutralized your target, the screen goes black, and the end. You don't get a cinematic. You don't get still images with some narration. You get the end in tiny, white font, and the credits start rolling. If there was any way we could compare this feeling of disappointment, it would be like when you see a firework launch and then fail to burst. What started as a spectacle of wonder is now a paper dud that has left an ash stain on the driveway.
Mission accomplished. Get out of there.
Halo 2.
Where would someone go to activate the other rings?
Why, the Ark, of course.
And where, Oracle, is that?
We've talked about false choices and abrupt endings, but the absolute worst way to end a game is by using it purely to sell us on the sequel. That's exactly what Halo 2 did. Just when it felt like we were reaching the climax, Master Chief says that he's finishing this fight, only for the screen to go black.
Sir, finishing this fight.
As the credits began to roll, most players couldn't shake the feeling like they were given a massive advertisement for Halo 3. That's a low blow, and Bungie would later admit that this type of ending was a bad move.
All right. Shoot.
Mass Effect 3.
What? Where am I?
The Citadel. It's my home.
Whenever the discussion of worst video game endings is brought up, Mass Effect 3 is one of the first titles to be mentioned, and for good reason. Before BioWare released the extended cut DLC, Mass Effect 3 unraveled everything that previous titles had already established. The ending was filled with several plot holes, and the writing was lackluster, to put it generously. You can bet your bottom dollar fans weren't going to take this sitting down, and sure enough, the pitchforks were so sharp that BioWare had to fix things. While the extended cut resolved issues, we still haven't forgotten the PR nightmare that was Mass Effect 3's ending.
The paths are open, but you have to choose.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.